Hello and welcome to Dominique's Books. Today's review is Off the Spectrum, Why the Science of Autism Has Failed Women and Girls by Gina Rippon. The title pretty much tells you what this book is about. So this is about how science has kind of had trouble finding women and girls with autism. And one thing that the author talks about several times is camouflaging or masking, which pretty much means that you try to be normal in society, and sometimes you don't even know you're doing it. So this book took me almost all of June to read, not because it was boring, but because it was dense, and there were some times I had to stop and read something else and then come back to it because it'd go back to some darker times in my life. I enjoyed school, but I didn't enjoy school. So I have sensory processing disorder. I was diagnosed when I was 7. So sensory processing disorder there's a few different things. There's the processing of things, but it also messes with your 5 senses. So sometimes bright lights can bother me. Sometimes loud noises can bother me. Smells. I'm really not good around heavy perfumes. Spices. I'm not a fan of Mexican food. And I could relate a lot in this book. So at the beginning, they talk about the history of autism and how lots of times boys have been diagnosed, but girls have kind of been set aside, where like lots of times teachers will see these issues and that. So I'm gonna try to find a few spots that I thought were rather good. Like sometimes there are things like we have high functioning interests, like they mentioned Hello Kitty. There was a time in my life where I had a lot of Hello Kitty stuff, and it's changed, I think, a little bit over the years. Like for a while I was collecting fairies, and now I've gotten into collecting pins. I think that's part of my autism, my being on the autistic spectrum. But like they mentioned things about itchy clothing and stuff. I have had that issue pretty much my whole life. I don't like tags on the back of my clothing. A lot of my clothes that have tags that are on the back of the neck, I have cut off because they'll drive me crazy. And I've noticed a lot more companies have they'll stamp it and then they'll have like the cleaning instructions on the side closer down so it's not touching your skin, that kind of stuff. But they talk about the difficulties of finding friends and stuff. One thing I thought about as I was reading this book was I didn't have a lot of friends, and especially I think elementary school was really difficult for me because I went from being in public school to going into private school, and trying to make friends was hard, or you'd make friends and then they'd kind of ostracize you. And you just wanted to find a place to fit in. And that has been really hard for me all my life. And so when I can find a place that I feel really good in, I think I might mask some. I'm not sure. I guess I asked a question to my mom once, and I'm like, I didn't even know I was doing that. But like, let's see. Because, yeah, one thing she mentions is why they think so many girls have not been diagnosed is we kind of, I guess they used we're hiding. It's harder to find us over boys. I don't know. It's like in one part, the pattern is neatly summed up by Kate, one of my late diagnosed interviewees, who had struggled with what was diagnosed as school phobia in her primary school, and then social anxiety in her secondary school. She was diagnosed with autism in her 30s, when psychiatrist who had just diagnosed her 6-year-old daughter as autistic suggested that Kate displayed many of the same signs of autism. I got lucky and didn't get diagnosed in my 30s. Let's see, and then let's see. One point worth remembering is that autism is considered a lifelong developmental disability present from birth or before, and normally diagnosed with the first 3 or 4 years of life, or earlier when the presented problem are more marked. So you would not expect the same age-related increases in prevalence. I think this word is prevalence. So I could relate to this book a lot. I'm thinking I'm going to give this book a 5. I think it's more because I could relate to a lot of the stuff she was talking about. And just as I was reading, I'm like, oh, I have that. I go through that sometimes. I never had any eating disorders. I didn't go through that, but I did go through a hard time of finding friends. I still have a hard time finding friends because I guess there's the idea of who can you trust? Is somebody going to then not be your friend because of something? So I'm thinking I'll give this book 5 stars. So if you enjoyed this review, like, comment, subscribe. See you next time. Bye.